What happens to a boy whose father passes before he becomes a man? He goes looking and he looks for something in drill instructors, in mentors, in bosses, in brotherhood, and eventually in the woman he marries. My guest today is Minhdoan. He lost his father as a teenager. He joined the Marines. He built a career on validation from anyone who would give it. And then his wife told him she couldn't have a family with him because he wasn't a husband. He was still a son. We're recording this now. Minhdoan is in Vietnam, his father's country, and he's raising his 2-year-old daughter on the same soil his father came from. And I'm looking to get into the transmission of your story. So what you have to share. So Minhdoan, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jeff.
I guess let's start off. What kind of father do you remember having? Like, what was your childhood like?
Yeah, my father was a very affectionate man. You know, he was that guy that he would watch a lot of movies with us, sitting on the couch, and we would all cuddle together, and he would pull us close, and he would constantly ask us like, "Do you love me? I love you," and super affectionate man. That was what I experienced a lot in my childhood. At the same time, although he loved hard, he got angry very hard as well. At times, it felt like he swung to the opposite side of the pendulum. And, to be honest, that was my blueprint: loving hard and hating hard, nothing in between. Yeah. So my mom worked a lot. So, really she was kind of you call it like the Dead Sea in the way, like with the 5 love languages, whereas my dad was the babbling brook. And, he was kind of the opposite sides of the pendulum with all the different emotions, whereas my mom was kind of just stable. Yeah, so really a lot of the modeling that I got was being around him a lot.
I don't think I know those love languages. The Dead Sea?
Yeah, it's a term. I think it was from that book, but typically with a couple, you got one that's the babbling brook, and then you got the other one that's a Dead Sea. So it's like the one is like pretty stable, whereas the other one is like kind of like off the rails in a fun way, but also like just really leaning towards different emotions and really living into that identity. Yeah. So growing up in that childhood, just seeing a lot of that in my father actually he was kind of more the babbling brook, just kind of loving hard and hating hard.
So he kind of oscillated between those two.
Right.
How old were you when he passed?
I was 13 years old.
What did the house feel like that year after he passed?
Quiet. It was very quiet. My mom was still working a lot, and I just started freshman year in high school. So, we kept busy in our books and in, leadership positions in high school. And to be honest, he was the father figure in my life. So because I felt I was lacking that at that moment, that year after, I was looking everywhere for some kind of support, some kind of hand holding, some kind of direction at that point.
What did being a man look like both before and after he passed? Like in your family, I mean.
Right. There's a Vietnamese saying called Chào, đích, and what that means is the oldest son of the oldest son of the oldest son. And it's kind of Game of Thronesy, when you have the oldest son that has that title, they put him up, they raise him up high, they put him on a pedestal. And that was my father. And my father had a very different life in Vietnam before the war. And what I saw in him, especially just growing up into my teenage years, is that life was very different in the States, right? He wasn't treated like that guy, right? He was more like, okay, we're here. We gotta fulfill the American dream. My mom was very like, let's stick to the plan. Let's follow through. You got to work hard. You got to get a full-time job kind of thing. And, he just did the thing. But I can say that what I modeled from him was, just seeing that he was working his 9 to 5. He was a factory worker, but it just felt like I definitely enjoyed a lot of his presence before school, after school. But many times I just didn't feel like I was able to really connect deeply with him, right? Because it was mostly just externally, and I can see how, he looked for that from us. And at the same time, that's what we modeled when we saw that coming from him. But when he left this world, we didn't have any more of that. And again, my mom just continued to work. not a lot of presence, not a lot of affection. She cooks for us a lot. That's how she shows her love in the household. But when it comes to the words and the feelings and the energy around that, we didn't really feel that from anyone else. So that's where it felt kind of quiet. It felt like we were searching a lot.
What did he give you that you still carry to this day?
Stage presence, singing. He was the life of the party, and I can see a lot of my brother in him as well. Yeah, he had a lot of charisma. He can walk into any room and you wouldn't physically see him, but you can feel it. You can feel that he's there, and he knew how to light up a room and just show everyone a good time.
You talked about that seeking. First of all, when did you realize that you were seeking? And can you walk me through how you sought validation? I know when we spoke before, you talked about seeking validation in coaches, mentors, bosses, the military. What were you actually looking for from them?
I was looking for whatever my dad gave me, just that external proof, that evidence of the love and the affection. Because I didn't get that. I didn't see that or receive that, or I felt like I didn't receive it from anyone other than my dad. So that's where I was constantly seeking that from teachers and bosses. And I didn't even realize I was doing that, to be honest with you. I didn't realize I was doing any of that. It was just more about, I felt like I have this huge void in my life, and that I needed to fill that void with staying busy, with keeping my head in the books, being in leadership, right? Junior treasurer, senior vice president, like just staying busy really, and just staying, hanging out with friends and just trying to keep up the grades. And that's all I knew what I needed to do at the time. So I figured I'd dive deeper into that. Right. And it really wasn't, I would say that I never really felt fulfilled pursuing at that age, because that's what my dad gave me was irreplaceable.
It's interesting you talk about seeking that love, and you went looking for the military in it. You went looking for it in the military. That seems like a contradiction.
Yeah, for the military, my brother and I both joined, and we were both we were curious more than anything else, right? And it's still very interesting to say, now that I'm saying it out loud, is that we started from a place where there was a huge void in our hearts, a huge void in our life, and that we needed to fill that void. And just out of simple curiosity, my brother and I were like, what can the military do? Like, can they provide us something that maybe that we were longing for? Something that may have gone away since our dad passed? Like, what can they provide us, that can help us feel like we are heading in the right direction? Because we just didn't know. And what's interesting is that even if my dad was still here, who knows? Maybe I still wouldn't have known if it was the right direction. But we were just more curious than anything else. And if it wasn't love, it was direction.
What did it provide that was genuine? And also, what did it cost you being in the Marines?
Just understanding that there was a lot of structure around the military that felt like this is something that I could be in. Like, just that whole idea of going to boot camp, breaking you down, building you up from scratch, and turning you into this elite warrior. Like, that sounded really cool at the time. So that's why my brother and I just jumped in with both feet. And he was 18 when he signed, so he was able to sign himself. I was 17, and my mom actually had to sign for me, which was probably one of the most difficult things that she had to do. But I would say that I had a pretty good experience. I still hang out with the guys to this day. You know what they say about shared misery, right? You get close to all the folks that you have shared misery with. And that was definitely the case, right? But there was always a reason for everything. There's always a reason. But my brother, on the other hand, he had a very different experience, because we joined the same time. We actually got to go to boot camp together. But when we got assigned our units, we weren't allowed to be in the same units. So we actually got put into different units. So I got deployed at a very different time than he did.
What was the cost? Like, what did he experience that you didn't experience?
So I was a landing support logistics, 0481. So we're typically known as the folks that would be first in, last out. We would set up shop, right? Set up shop before the unit comes in to make sure that they are well prepped. When I was out there, I I did a lot of that, but for the most part, it felt like everything was already in its place and that we were just doing more of the same. Uh, but with so I went in 05, 06, and my brother, he went in 08, 09. And as a radio guy, he got attached to an infantry unit and he was on the road for the whole time. He talks about how like when they shower, they got to use the one baby wipe, right? One baby wipe a day. And just there's a specific order for that, of course. You got to use that baby wipe. Um, but yeah, his experience was very different from mine. I wouldn't say mine was a piece of cake, but it was decent. I got my deployment. I was on base for the most part, and I was assigned as an armorer. So I didn't even go out. I didn't even go out to experience the field, but I heard a lot of stories, right, when people are coming back. Whereas with my brother, he was out there the entire time. The experience that he had out there, it shook him. It shook him. It still shakes him today. And it's something that is going to be a lifelong healing journey for him to really navigate through. Because the things that he did, it took years, it took decades to forgive himself for what he had to do out there.
Going back to the validation, I imagine in the military, it's very black and white around either you did it well or you didn't do it well. And I imagine those moments where you get that validation or approval from a mentor or from a commanding officer, something inside you lights up. When did you first notice that you were chasing that hit?
Yeah, great question, Jeff. I personally got meritoriously promoted, moving up the ranks pretty fast. And it started when I was in MOS school, military occupational specialty school. Right? Because when you're in the Marines, you do the 3-month boot camp, and then you do MCT afterwards, which is Marine combat training. And then after that, you go to MOS school. And I studied my butt off, and I was first in class. Granted, the class was pretty small, but I got first in class and I got meritoriously promoted. And that was the moment I was like, this might be it. This might be the thing for me, because I was receiving that. I was receiving the recognition for the hard work, right? And where a lot of the Marines would be spending their time going out and having a good time, like I was staying in and I was studying for the test that was going to be the next day, right? And to me, that was like one of those aha moments where when they gave me the E3 ranking on the meritorious promotion at graduation, I was like, wow, like it's happening. Like this could be it for me.
But realizing that you're chasing a hit is more of a story, though. You're chasing validation. Did you have that moment where you realized
Right.
it's chasing a dopamine hit rather than something genuine?
Up until then, I still had no clue that what I was doing, that I was chasing that validation. And to be honest, I didn't even realize until I was with my wife. And this was many years later. So this was the identity that I was holding up for a long, long time.
Maybe that's a good time to switch to your wife. So you graduated, you left the military, you left the Marines and met your wife. Is that the order of it?
Yeah, it was I finished college and the Marines roughly at the same time in 2010, and that's when I met her. Yeah, so it was almost like the end of a couple chapters and moving on to the next.
So you got married and you expected you kind of thought you would have a family after that. Is that right?
Yeah, I was with her for I think 12 or 13 years by that time. And still up to that point, I didn't realize what I was doing. And I didn't realize how it was affecting my relationship. Yeah, so I showed up in my victimhood for most of our relationship together, quite honestly. I put all the energy into receiving the praise and the recognition at work. And then as soon as I stepped through the door, all that mask comes off. And now I'm like, oh, like I am now in my victimhood. Like I have no more energy, and I got nothing left to give for the day. Right? I'm just tired because I did my job. I provided, and I was seeking that validation at work the entire time. And when I wasn't seeing in real time that validation at home, then I would seek it at home. I would try to do things to receive some kind of praise at home. And that's where the rub happened. in our relationship. We got into a lot of arguments, lots of arguments. And
How did that victimhood show up at home?
it would, like, I would literally walk through the door and I would just fall to the ground and just be like, I'm tired. I'm done. And she was working at home. So that was the version that she saw of me. And that was not the version that she saw when we first met, the man that she married. And she didn't deserve that.
You call that
Yeah, it was
victimhood.
almost like, yeah,
Is that not just, I'm trying to separate that from, you had a hard day at work and you come home and you're tired. Why are you calling that victimhood?
because I left nothing else on the table for her.
Hmm.
And how does it even make sense that I put all of my energy into work and I leave nothing else for her when she was expecting a different version of me? So it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to her. Looking back now, there could have been a ton of things I could have done in order to source myself, like journaling, walking, like doing a workout, like doing something that helps source myself so that I can bring more of that love and that energy and presence at home. But what
What do
I
you
did
mean by
instead
source
was
yourself?
just like feeling alive, feeling more energetic. Right. Because I showed up in so many ways as like a fixer or a people pleaser at work, looking for that next promotion, looking for that raise, looking for that recognition. And I left it all at work. I left it all on the table. So when I came home, it was almost like I was looking for her to like build me back up. Like, oh, like I'm so tired. Like, what do you want to do now? I had no energy. And what she saw was just a shell version of me.
So your wife said she couldn't have a family with you, like not wouldn't, but couldn't.
Mm.
Was it, did she just say that one time or did you stay at her and it was like the 100th time that
Mm.
which one landed for you?
It was the one time. Because before that, it was chronic, just arguments that where she ended up saying like, "You're just not emotionally available for me. You're not." And I honestly didn't know what that meant at the time. But when it came time for talking about a family, it was just the one time where when I asked her, she looked at me straight in my eyes and just said, "You're not effing ready." And that was a huge hit to my identity, to my ego, whatever you call it, because it just felt like for me, like legacy was such a huge thing. And I wanted it. I wanted to build it with her, but there's something obvious that was missing in this relationship. And I just couldn't put a finger on it. I had no idea what it was. Yeah. So now I realize that it has a lot to do with the emotional intelligence and it has a lot to do with understanding how to love all parts of me, the good and the bad. Because if I didn't learn how to love the bad parts, I tend to run from it. I tend to hide from it. And that shows up in so many different ways in our life, in our relationships, in our business, more than we can count.
I think a lot of men hear something like that from their wives. And I mean, I can think of times with my ex and she would say something and that made me want to be more obedient. I'm using that word on purpose. What made you hear it differently?
I think it's because to me, it felt like the last straw. Like when she told me straight up, like not having a family, to me, that felt like the ultimatum of like, this is not working out. This will continue to not work out. Right. It's almost like I kind of brushed off all those previous fights that we had. Almost like, oh, like this is just going to dissolve and go away in a few days. And yeah, it comes back every month, every other month. But that when she said that, that was like, holy crap. Like this is it. Like if I don't do something about it, then this relationship is over. That's what I felt.
So it sounds like you joined a brotherhood. You started to take action and you started to look within as to why someone would say that, your wife would say that to you.
Right.
And that must have been like you said, a huge hit to your ego. So you started looking inward, you joined a brotherhood, you did somatic work, you did breath work. What was there a single session that actually started to move things? Not necessarily the framework, but what moment started to move things for you?
Yeah, it was the first immersion, like the men's retreat that I went to, and it had like 35 guys, and we all had an opportunity to share our story, and I felt heard probably for the first time. I felt heard, and I felt like I wasn't being judged for being less than. And as ironic as it sounds, I felt almost for the first time that I was loved unconditionally by a room full of strangers, room full of men. And that moment to this day still gives me goosebumps because that was when I had been like starving. That's what I was starving for since I was a teenager. And I didn't have the words for it. And it took me over a dozen years with my wife to finally realize what it felt to receive love unconditionally.
Hmm.
And that was it for me.
I imagine, well, I know those sort of changes don't happen. Like you start to change and things feel worse at home for a while.
Right.
Can you walk
Yep.
me through how your relationship changed as you started kind of breaking this open, like breaking yourself from your
Yeah.
old
Yeah.
habits?
Yeah, absolutely. Because a big part of this is like, it's an immersion for a reason. It's the reason, like that word, right? You're immersing yourself into a very different environment. And now you know what's possible. But we have a saying in the brotherhood called gravity is fierce. Because if you don't do anything, you're gonna default to your highest level of training. And in this case, no training whatsoever in this field, right? So it took a lot of practice. It took a lot of rewiring. And what that meant was growing a lot more awareness of the times that I got triggered in real time, right? The times where I felt like I was getting into my victimhood or I was trying to solve a problem that you know, that I felt like I needed to be a fixer for, or when I was people pleasing and saying yes to things when I meant no. It was being able to catch those moments and doing the somatic work to allow myself to fully just be in that moment rather than letting my nervous system take the steering wheel. That was a big part of my journey, right? Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about there's a stimulus and there's a response. And when we learn how to have power in the space between the stimulus and the response, we are no longer a slave to our nervous system, right? It's a beautiful thing, like just understanding that we have the ability to rewrite our story because the story is going to feed into how we live our lives, our strategy, right? But if we take the time to rewrite that story and realize that all these things that happened to us in the past actually happened for us, it becomes beautiful gifts. It becomes different, beautiful opportunities for us to shift into a higher being of ourselves. And just realizing that I have so much grace now, and I have so much gratitude for all of the experiences, even the death of my dad, all of it, because it allowed me to really lean into who I am today.
What did you talked about your nervous system. What did your nervous system do the first time you stopped reacting? Like, where did that energy go? I know when I get triggered by something, I feel that anger build up and it's got to go
Hmm.
somewhere.
Right.
How did you?
Yeah. With the somatic work, especially in real time, I love the box breathing because we still get triggered to this day. It's just a matter of how quickly are you able to respond to it rather than reacting to it. And even to this day, I get triggered. It's just a matter of now I have the tools. So I love box breathing, 4 seconds, inhale, hold, exhale, hold, especially if it's a real time conversation. If I do have a few minutes, I do something called a conscious rage. And this allows me to channel all in a very mature way. It allows me to channel all that anger towards a pillow, right? Or something that allows me to really express it. But what's really beautiful about that experience when I do it is that it becomes a gateway for other emotions. It's almost like I have this facade of anger in front of me, and that's what everyone sees. But as soon as that entity goes away, behind that anger is like an innocent little boy that just wanted to be loved, right? That's really all it is. And that's why many times after I complete a conscious rage, there might be crying, there might be some laughter, there might be immense joy, right? Because now I've given myself the opportunity to hold that space for myself, right? Just really to love that inner boy, that inner child within me.
As you did this work, how did you recognize that you were still chasing validation? And how did you catch yourself in the moment when you realized your nervous system was still looking for that validation?
Mm. The more I did the work, the easier it became visible. Because again, if I wasn't if if I wasn't aware or if I wasn't even conscious of what my nervous system was simply doing, we call that limbic hijacking, right? Your prefrontal cortex is completely shut down, and your your limbic system just takes over, right? And you're straight up in primal mode, like you're running from a lion, right? For me, what was very common was I would stonewall. Like I look like a deer in headlights. So because my theory behind that was if I didn't say anything, maybe this goes away. And whenever we got into these arguments, I wouldn't make eye contact and I would just keep my mouth shut. And of course, that made it worse, way worse, because she needed me to say something and she kept prodding and poking and chasing after me, sometimes physically, looking for me to say something. But my thoughts were like, you know what? I'm just going to not say anything because anything that comes out of my mouth is going to make it worse, right? That was off. That was completely off. But when I started to do the work, I would catch myself wanting to shut down, wanting to not say a word. And it took a lot of courage internally for me to speak up and say, look, it wasn't what I'm not angry at you. I'm not frustrated at you, but what you said made me clench my fist or it made me tighten my gut and I feel very angry, right? A big part of me feels very angry and frustrated. And ultimately, I just want to feel like I'm providing. I want to help and I want to show you that I can be that person for you. So what I just did there was SEW, right? That's popularized by Julie Caldwell, where you talk about your sensation and then you communicate the emotion and then you talk about what you want or what you don't want. And what's really beautiful about that exercise is that now instead of us pointing fingers at each other and saying like, you made me do this or you did that, we're now sitting side by side and we're looking at the problem together and we're addressing it as a team. It becomes such a huge change in our dynamic and the way we approach our triggers now.
And as you start doing that work, sometimes you see the effects of it in the other person, in your wife. How did those changes start to show up in her? What was the first thing you noticed that she stopped doing?
Yeah, a big thing that I learned was understanding the dynamics of masculine and feminine energy and just realizing that we all have it. All genders have both, but I put all my masculine energy into work in the past. And then I had nothing else much to give when I walked through that door. But for her, she actually grew up out of a need for safety. She was very much in her masculine as well, right? Her mom was diagnosed with schizophrenia when she was 5 years old. And she felt like she needed to get out of the house and make decisions and get all these jobs in order to have that sense of freedom and that space, right? So to answer your question, Jeff, I noticed the change in her when I was able to see in her eyes and like energetically in her body language that she was able to relax into her feminine and not feel like she had to come up with all the decisions. I think that was a big part, a big shift.
So you're talking about masculine and feminine energy. There's this, and I think it's really prevalent on the internet these days, of this almost performative masculinity where I'm in charge, I'm the man, rawr.
Mm.
But it feels very performative. Like I said, it's like, chest stuck out
Right.
and your jaw set. To me, there's this quieter energy of I've got it. I'm competent, I'm calm, I'm centered. That to me,
Yes.
what's the difference to you? And what do each of them feel like in the body?
Yeah. Great question, Jeff. I actually had a session recently, earlier this week about it, but I would define that into three different labels, right? There's the passive masculine, there's the aggressive masculine, and then there's the assertive masculine, right? Because with the passive masculine, it's like you're a pushover, everyone walks over you, you're a people pleaser, my needs come second, right? Who cares what I think? Right. That's the passive. And then the aggressive is like my way or the highway. Right. It's kind of like what you mentioned. The assertive one is the goal because it's almost like you have to pull from both the passive and the aggressive energies in order to be assertive. Right. It's like you state what you want, you say it with conviction, you're confident with it, you made your choice, but you're open to discussion. You are allowing space for the other to speak as well. But you've held your grounds and you've identified your boundaries from a loving place. That's very different from being aggressive or being passive. So for me, when I started to do that, how did that feel different in my body? It felt freeing, to be honest, because quite often it was like the first time, like by being able to communicate this way, I was able to like stick to my core values and my principles and not push them to the side. Like I'm able to communicate in a way where I am grounded. I'm rooted. Like this is who I am. This is a big part of me. And it actually improved my relationships with a lot of people around me, family members, friends, colleagues, business partners, because I was able to communicate in a loving way, but also say like, this doesn't work for me or this does work for me. Like I'm able to do that rather than keeping my mouth shut and just let it pass by.
Do you have an elder these days? Not necessarily a coach, but someone you found along the way who tells you the truth.
The closest elder I could think of is my father-in-law that does that. I personally would want him to do more of that, to be honest with you. But he does it to a certain extent, and I'm always grateful for that when he tells me.
If most of us have to assemble our father figures from fragments, who handed you the most useful pieces?
Man, I feel like every father figure in my life all played a key role in, having some pieces of the puzzle and just being able to enjoy that journey from like having every one of them in my life. But I would say that it was from joining the brotherhood that really allowed me to zoom out at the 10,000 feet and really look at my life and understand how I was actually living it and realizing for the first time that I can live it however I want. I have the ability to do that. But I first have to get out of my head and drop into my heart, learning to love all parts of me. Right. That was a big part of my journey. Yeah. So the brotherhood was a beautiful milestone in my life that allowed me to do that.
Now that you have men coming to you for coaching, what temptations do you find you're having to resist? What I mean by that is, how do you do coaching work so that you aren't still validation seeking?
Right. Yeah. Great question. Great question. Because as soon as I'm seeking that, if I am seeking it, then it becomes about me and not about them. And they're going to sense that. And that's not fair to them. Right. So a big part of the prerequisite, if you will, is to learn how to internally validate myself. Like when I say source myself, it is in the long walks, the journaling. Sometimes we do something called cord cutting. If I had a very busy day with a lot of clients and, really as an empath, like really feeling their pain, it's important that I quote unquote cord cut, right? Being able to just let it go and come in, reset, ready to go to support the next brother. Right. So that's to me, that's what it means. Is like learning to validate myself, because once I do that, I don't need the external validation from anywhere else. Like that becomes the cherry on top. Like it's nice to have, but I don't need it. I don't need it from anyone. I don't need it from my family, my wife, my daughter. I don't need it from anyone whatsoever, because I know how to give that to myself. That's a big part of this, as being a coach that supports other men as well, is helping them to validate themselves as well, and showing them and spotlighting the answers where they found it themselves. I don't need to give them the answers. They've had the answers all along. I'm just simply asking questions to help them navigate their own lives and realize the beauty behind it. Right? It's a journey back to who you were always meant to be. There's nothing to fix. A lot of men think that there's something to fix about them, but that's not the case.
I'm talking to you while you're in Vietnam. That's your father's country.
Yep.
You're with your daughter. What are you doing there that you couldn't do anywhere else?
Immerse ourselves in the culture and connect with a lot of my family out here. Yeah, it's beautiful. Just being able to, just knowing that they're literally minutes away from me, and I could just spend a good part of my days just connecting with them. How are you doing? How's life? Like just being able to have simple conversations with them. And I'm not there yet. It's still very high level, surface level type of language for me. But that's actually why my wife and I are taking lessons right now too. So we're taking lessons from a private tutor, and just being able to apply that in real time.
What part of your father do you want her to know, even though she'll never meet him?
What's really beautiful is that when I see her every day, I already see the traits of my father within her. Like such a fun going person, beautiful entertainer. Like she just makes us laugh and crack up every day. And she's always singing. She's having a great time. And she's the life of the party. Like everywhere we go, everyone just really enjoys her presence. And that reminds me a lot of my dad. So it's already in her. It's beautiful seeing that gift.
And when she's 17, for example, and
Gosh.
someone asks her, the time goes by really fast. So,
Yeah.
I'm speaking from experience here. So when she's 17 and someone asks her what kind of man she's looking for, what answer
Mm.
do you want her to give without her thinking?
The kind that her father was, right? Like being that example every single day. Like she's gonna break a lot of hearts, to be honest. Like she's so pretty. She's gonna break a lot of hearts. But yeah, I do feel like what's really beautiful is that uh, being so aware and so conscious of my journey and stepping into this new version of myself. Like she gets to see that every day, and I think uh that's going to be the example that she's going to see and experience. So in comparison, I do feel like whoever it is out there that is going to start a relationship with my daughter, like that's what she's going to be comparing herself to. And I'm happy for that. I'm really grateful for that.
I'm glad my kids get to see this version of myself rather than
Mm.
15 years ago. So that really resonates with me. And that's a beautiful thought. Yeah, that's the conversation. Yeah, it sounds like you had to really build yourself and do that. Minhdoan had to build the man without a model and with his wife as the first person who refused to keep him as a boy, with a daughter who will inherit whatever he ends up building. If you're listening and you grew up without a father or one who was a ghost in the house, your work is not to find him. He's not coming back. Your work is to become the version of him your kids need. Or if you don't have kids, the version of him that the next man down the line is missing. You can find Minhdoan at the links in the show notes. Until next time.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right.